Now, this trial actually took place last week. We're just getting into it now. So let's go into court for a look at the state's opening statement.
Like lighting a fuse and escaping seconds before the bomb explodes, Jeannine Jaramillo set fatal wheels in motion and accelerated towards a path of inevitable destruction. Forged in deceit, this road led to an unimaginable tragedy that impacted many, injured several, and killed Frank Lovato and Officer Robert Duran. On March 2nd, 2022, at 11:09, Richard Musser called 911 to report that a woman yelled to him for help, saying that she was being held hostage at knife point. Mr. Musser gave the description of the vehicle as a white sedan. A kidnapping in progress with weapons gets the highest priority assignment by dispatch. The SFPD officers from around the city immediately head towards the location of the dispatch, the Vizcaya Apartments. Santa Fe Police Department Officer Michael Romero happened to be close by the Vizcaya Apartments. At the intersection of St. Francis and Sawmill, Officer Romero was the first to get eyes on this potential suspect vehicle. Officer Romero wanted to be sure that this was the suspect vehicle, so he turned around and pulled in behind the white Chevy Malibu. He could see a driver, but with the dark tinted windows, he couldn't see anything else. He tried to get a read on the plate, but was too far away to appropriately or accurately see the plate. Immediately, this white Chevy Malibu started accelerating away from Officer Romero. At this point, Officer Robert Duran, who was also responding, sees Officer Romero behind this white Chevy Malibu, and he falls in behind the white sedan. The acceleration away from officers increased into much more evasive maneuvers, and Romero and Duran initiated a pursuit. Marked vehicles, activating lights and sirens. A female hostage being held at knife point is now heightened in danger by a suspect driving erratically and dangerously. The dash camera and body-worn camera evidence will show that several officers became involved as the suspect vehicle dangerously moved throughout our city streets. Going the wrong way, U-turning whenever and wherever, running red lights, and all at crazy high speeds. With this unpredictable behavior, officers tried but could not get into a position that they were able to safely stop this vehicle. The suspect vehicle then led officers onto I-25 on Old Pecos Trail. She lures the officers into a fatal trap that is now going south in northbound lanes. At this point, Officer Romero decides to travel alongside the white Chevy Malibu, pacing the vehicle, almost going parallel to it, in case the case changed directions yet again. He would be in a strategic position to stop that vehicle, or try to stop the vehicle. Officer Romero will tell you that the only notice that travelers had were the lights and sirens of the police units. A warning. Some cars on I-25 move out of the way. They move out of the way. Some to the left, others to the right. The white Chevy Malibu playing chicken with the lives of everybody on I-25. Light traffic, speed still at 90, are the last words that Officer Duran spoke less than 10 seconds before he comes head on with a truck driven by Frank Lovato. Frank Lovato driving a Dodge Ram that had just seconds before narrowly missed the white Chevy Malibu. A missile car driving the wrong way down I-25. This crash is captured on camera. The dash cam of a semi-truck traveling the appropriate direction has a camera that is activated and reverts in time when it registers an event on the semi-truck. An event can be slamming on the brakes, jarring, or having to maneuver the steering wheel. But this semi-truck camera reverts and captures the head-on crash on camera. The crash is also captured on the camera from Officer Montano, who happened to be third in the pursuit, traveling at what he believed to be a safe distance. You will see on these videos, from the front angle and from the back angle, that there are no words for the impact and devastation caused by the wrong-way driver.
All right, we're going to step aside now for a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have more of the state's opening statement in the fake kidnapping murder trial of Jeannine Jaramillo. Keep it here on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the brazen shooting of a health insurance CEO that has been met with divisive reactions. We're bringing you the latest developments in this high-profile case.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
This was a depraved game of chicken.
Driving the wrong way into oncoming traffic.
He basically kidnapped me. There was not a kidnapping.
The Fake Kidnapping Murder Trial. Trial coverage weekdays, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
All right, folks, we're going to get back to court in just a minute, but first I want to bring in our guests for this hour. Joining us, attorney and former prosecutor Randolph Rice and trial attorney Alexis Rosenberg. Thank you both for joining me tonight on the program. Randolph, I'll start with you first. You know, I love a good metaphor in an opening statement. She called the car, in this case, the missile car. I think that's effective. This is one of those cases as a prosecutor where the videos basically provide, I think, pretty much all the evidence you need in the case. So it's one of those cases where you really have to play not to lose. Is that something that's a problem for prosecutors? How do you approach that type of situation?
Well, you're right. These are often cases where it's a layup, right? And you just don't want to miss that layup. But in this case, they have to lay out all those different factors to satisfy the crime. They also need to get into the mindset, or at least the intent of what she was doing or why she was doing it to prove these charges. So, you know, you're right. We love a good metaphor. This is probably a layup for them, but they got to make sure they cover all their bases. Don't miss anything. Follow that outline so that you hit every point.
Yeah, fair enough. And Alexis, speaking of the mindset of the defendant, I'm going to ask you, what does the defendant do? I can't figure out what's going on here. Is she just an adrenaline junkie? Is she a career criminal? What was she thinking? Does she double down in the defense and say that there was, in fact, somebody in the car and that's what actually happened? I can't imagine they want to go in that direction. Where does the defense go, Alexis?
Michael, I agree with you. There's a big question. What was she thinking here? Was she on something? I mean, it just doesn't really make sense. And then to come to find out that she's done this before, I'm not understanding. If you're going to steal a car, why are you screaming out the window to get more attention? So, and this is a first-degree murder trial. So we do need to know what, they're going to have testimony about this intent.
Yeah, the intentionality is interesting in this case. We'll get to that right now, though. I want to take folks back into court. The state is painting the tragic crash scene for jurors in its opening statement in the fake kidnapping murder trial of Jeannine Jaramillo.
You will see the scene. Cars are totaled, and Mr. Lovato's truck and Officer Robert Duran's unit number 286 are nearly disintegrated by the impact. Dr. Aidan Kerr from the Office of the Medical Investigator will testify as to the injuries that Officer Duran and Frank Lovato suffered, and he will tell you that no one could have survived this blunt force trauma. Now, Officer Duran and Frank Lovato were not the only two vehicles involved in this crash. A woman by the name of Alexis Jenkins and Officer Gilbert Philip Montano were also involved. Officer Montano, as I stated, was traveling behind Norris. Officer Norris was a primary pursuing officer, and Duran secondary behind him. Officer Montano was traveling for officer safety reasons, and again, at what he believed to be a safe distance. But even from far away, he was caught in the collision, running into Alexis Jenkins, who was forced off the road by the white Chevy Malibu. Officer Montano went to the hospital with chest pain, And Alexis Jenkins will describe the permanent injury she suffered as she was just starting her way home to Colorado Springs after a girls' weekend in Santa Fe. Other civilians in the direct line of fire of the white Chevy Malibu will testify as to what they saw and what they witnessed, fearing that they or someone behind them would be next. With the bomb set behind it, the Chevy Malibu didn't hesitate as it accelerated again away from the impact and the debris. Moments later, the Chevy, still traveling south in northbound traffic, comes head-on with Benigno Salas, traveling in the northbound passing lane. Not knowing what hit him, wondering if someone's windshield may have flown off. Was he on the wrong side of the road? He wasn't sure, as the Malibu sideswiped his driver's side. Mr. Salas was rendered unconscious, and when he came to, he was engulfed in white. He felt warm. Mr. Salas thought he had died. But the white were his airbags, and the warmth was his coffee that had spilled in the collision. Luckily, Mr. Salas suffered only minor injuries, protected by the weight of his GMC truck. His GMC truck was totaled on the shoulder, parts throughout I-25, his axle, and the wiring along the median. Thankfully, the heavy truck, the force and weight of it, was able to disable the white Chevy Malibu to the extent that it too came to a halt. Not without trying to get away, but it couldn't, only having 3 wheels. Officer Julian Norris and Officer Romero watched as the Malibu came to a stop. Concerned about what the driver's next move was, neither Norris or Romero ever had eyes off this vehicle. Both Officer Norris and Officer Romero see one person crawl out of the driver's side window. That person, at that moment in time, they believed was the female captive. The female captive runs to Officer Norris. She's distraught. She's scared. She's frantic, her arms in the air. She's screaming. He tried to kill me. He has a knife. He poured gasoline all over me. He has a gun. He beat my head. But now, she was safe. Officers believed they had just saved her life. So, the female captive made them believe. At this point, there's an armed suspect at large. A suspect that the female immediately identifies to Officer Norris as Mark Lopez, her boyfriend of just a few months. He has a gun. He's wearing a red shirt, black jacket, dark jeans, and a black beanie. She thinks Mark Lopez ran into the bushes. Did he run? Was he in the car? As you can imagine, this was a critical question for officer safety reasons. This question became even more important now knowing that Mark Lopez, what he was capable of, and that he was armed with a gun. What about our community safety? The female states that Mark Lopez ran into the bushes, but Norris wasn't sure. He wasn't convinced. He only saw one person get out of that vehicle. After hours, the car is cleared by SWAT, and Mark Lopez, red shirt, black jacket, dark jeans, black beanie, armed with a gun, his whereabouts are unknown. As you can imagine, there's a chaotic scene. News traveling around the state. I-25 is shut down for hours in both directions. There's an active manhunt for Mark Lopez, identified only by what he's wearing. Schools are on lockdown, but the hostage is safe. But there is a civilian and a Santa Fe police officer dead. That's what we knew. New Mexico State Police comes to the scene and they assume responsibility for this case. They centralize a command unit on I-25. Agent Wyatt Harwell is assigned as case agent. The reconstruction team, led by Agent Davin Barella, responds to the scene along with drone operations. And other state police agents are running intel, trying to find someone who fits the vague description of Mark Lopez. The female captive is with Santa Fe Police Department at St. Vincent's Hospital. And Santa Fe Police Department officers are doing their best to get information that they can relay to command. From the beginning, this defendant is treated with dignity and respect and rushed to safety and aid. You will see the first video of defendant running to officers. Her first contact with Norris and later Officer Timothy Lopez. Officer Tim Lopez takes her to the hospital, concerned about her well-being. She's treated, and at this point we learn who the female is. She identifies herself as Jeannine Jaramillo.
Now, before we go to break, a mass shooting at a private Christian school in Madison, Wisconsin, leaves 3 people dead. Now, one of the dead includes the shooter, who officials say was a student. The shooting happened at the Abundant Life Christian School this morning. Police say the student opened fire, killing 2 people, 1 teacher and 1 teenage student in the last week before the Christmas break. Now, the school is non-denominational, has nearly 400 students from kindergarten through high school. We'll keep you updated on that story, of course. All right, we're going to squeeze in a break now, but when we return, opening statements continue, and the prosecutor details how the defendant stuck to her lies about being kidnapped even after learning that 2 people were killed. Keep it here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala, back now to New Mexico for the fake kidnapping murder trial of Jeannine Jaramillo. Now, she's charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Santa Fe police officer Robert Duran and retired Las Vegas, New Mexico firefighter Frank Lovato. Now, they died in a head-on collision while the officer was pursuing who he thought was a dangerous kidnapping suspect. Now, Jaramillo faces life sentences if convicted in their deaths. I'm going to get you back into that final part of the state's openings.
Now, keep in mind the crash is captured, as I stated, on camera from both the front and behind. The defendant's statements are recorded in the hospital, in the state police interview room, and in a video on March 3rd, where Jeannine talks to KOB News. She then talks again to New Mexico State Police agent Elan Benitez, who brings her in after strange and cagey behavior. Before Agent Harwell tells her about the deaths on I-25 and after, her story stays the same. She was a victim of a scary and dangerous kidnapping by a man by the name of Mark Lopez, who set out to kill her in what is best described as a murder-suicide mission. She acknowledges over and over again that Mark did this on purpose and that he caused the crash, going so far as to tell Agent Harwell, "I didn't tell him to go and drive in a certain way. He has a mind of his own." The investigation completely unravels Jeannine Jaramillo's story. And I'm going to leave you with 4 points about what the facts and the evidence are going to show over the next many days. Number 1, what the badge and oath of service means to officers and the moral compass that guided them to prioritize and save her life on March 2nd, 2022. They believed they had accomplished that. Number 2, the quality and the integrity of the New Mexico State Police investigation. There was not a stone left unturned. There was not a lead not followed up on to determine who was driving. Did Mark Lopez exist? And who was with her when she called out for help from the driver's seat of the white Chevy Malibu at the Vizcaya Apartments. We didn't question, state police didn't question whether she had a male passenger at one point. But who was this? This man, his name is Jerry Chavez. And the evidence will show that he got out of that car and was not with her as she drove away from the Vizcaya Apartments a little after 11 a.m. on March 2nd, 2022. But is that enough? Maybe not. We have science. We have DNA evidence. We have modern vehicle technology. And we have microscopic analysis of the fibers of her T-shirt that put her butt in that driver's seat, her hands on that wheel, and her foot on the gas when the driver's side airbag deploys. Number 3, Jeannine Jaramillo is not a victim. There is no boyfriend of 4 months by the name of Mark Lopez, and there was no kidnapping. As unbelievable as it seems, there is evidence that shows this was all by design. She chose to fake a need for help. She chose to not pull over with police lights and sirens behind her. She chose to step on the gas and flee from law enforcement in what was later determined to be a stolen vehicle. She chose to drive without regard for the safety of innocent drivers, and she chose a deadly path to escape. Or if that plan failed, a plan to secure her purported safety. And then she chose to feign a story over and over and over and over again. Number 4, there is one person responsible for the carnage left in her wake. And that person is Jeannine Jaramillo. She's guilty of all crimes charged. And when you consider her calculated plan, her motive, her intent, her knowledge of the danger and risk involved, and add in her gross deceit, she's guilty of murder.